Welcome to the Faithful Fathering Podcast. Thank you for joining us. This is Rick Wirtz. I am the founder and president of Faithful Fathering, where the mission is to encourage and equip dads to be faithful fathers. Those are dads that prioritize their physical presence, are engaged emotionally, and lead spiritually by example. This podcast, we're continuing the discussion around why faithful fathering is important in your life. We're here to help you be the dad the next generation needs. And I always want to point you to the website, faithfulfathering.org, where you can click on the For Dads button and see a history of our vlogs or studies that really complement these podcasts very well. And as always, this will be a very practical discussion that I pray blesses you as our listeners and engaged in faithful fathering on your journey as a father. In the studio with me today is a dear friend to discuss why faithful fathering is important. Is a very special guest, Julius Karow. He's a husband and dad, and husband to. I'm sorry, I did go ahead and introduce your bride and let you introduce yourself.
My name is Julius Karow. My wife's name is Shanda Karow, and we have 4 adopted children. We are currently fostering a teenage girl and her son as well.
Fantastic. Well, that's quite a load. Tell us a little bit more about yourself as far as how long you've been married and your background a little bit.
Okay, so me and my wife got married in 2011. We were together 4 years before we got married, so we've been together right at 15 years now. So what else would you say?
How you said you have a teenage daughter and she has a daughter, so that suggests that you guys have a house full already, and yet you don't have kids in the marriage, but you've brought kids into your marriage, into your home.
Yeah, so we've been foster parents for right at 11 years now. We started out as foster parents with a family friend, had a son who needed to be taken care of. For a short period of time, and then after that we became official foster parents with the state of Texas, and have been doing that for about 10 years.
Fantastic. So give us that broad brush, if you would, Julius, on just what foster care is about, and again how you got interested in being. Obviously, it is I guess it's a statewide licensing, yet you're involved here in Harris County. But give us a little bit of a broad brush why foster care is out there. What was your motivation to get engaged?
So fostering. So first off, I was adopted by my grandparents from birth. My 3 siblings were also adopted by my grandparents from birth. My grandmother was adopted, so my family was always kind of a thing that we talked about, things that we knew about, very obvious in our family. And so that was just something that we talked about. As far as foster care in the United States, currently there's around 400,000 kids in the U.S. foster care system.
Wow.
There's about 117 of those kids that are legally free and ready for adoption.
117,000?
117,000,
right,
yes, sir. On an average year, there's about 20,000 kids that age out of the U.S. foster care system, and that feeds directly into our homeless population, feeds into the sex trafficking population, and then just feeds into our prison population.
So when you say age out, what is the average time that someone would be in a foster care? I've read where it usually is like 2.5 years in a system, but sometimes there's 6-8 years in the system.
So the average, I think, currently, as far as time spent in the foster care system for a lot of kids right now, is about 5.5 years.
Really? Okay.
Yes, sir. On average. And so as far as aging out, most kids age out at the age of 18. There are states such as Texas that have what's called extended foster care, where kids can be in foster care up until the age of 21, as long as they're legally working or in school full time.
Okay.
So there is ways for them to extend that care or that service with some different.
How do kids get in the foster care system?
So most people think that kids in the foster care system is from abuse or physical. Most of the foster care system is due to neglect. Now, neglect could be anything from mom and dad's on drugs, they're not taking care of the children, they can't provide for the children, whether that be physical needs, emotionally, different things like that. But neglect is the number one reason why kids are in the foster care system.
Okay, and I would assume that the attraction to adoption is really for quite young kids. As they get older in the system, it's harder and harder to find those adoptive parents.
Yes. So most of the kids currently that are in the foster care system, and the kids that are open for adoption, are mostly older kids, usually after the age of 10. And that is one of the reasons why there are so many. As far as locally in the foster care system is that in some cases when people are looking to adopt, they do kind of specify, well, I want a baby, I want a younger kid, and so those kids are more, like you said, more attractive when it comes to and there's also just a stereotype and just a unrealistic knowledge about older kids. Because when people hear about the foster care system, obviously it's a broken system. It's a system that in itself, in its name, is designed to be temporary. It's a temporary placement of a child, and their goal in the foster care system ultimately is reunification. Obviously, they want the parents to be able to work a service plan. They want them to be able to get their lives together and then to be able to reunify the children with the families. And so what people tend to think is the older kids that are in the system for long periods of time, they're broken, there's something wrong with them, there's a reason why they're still there, and so they're the ones that get overlooked or not thought about nearly as much as far as that goes when it comes to selecting kids.
Right. Yeah. So what is when the foster care focus is on what to
I mean, like I said, ideally, in a perfect world, they want to reunify with the parents.
Right.
That's ideal because ultimately, there's a lot of things that can happen if they don't reunify with the parents. Because a lot of kids that come into foster care with siblings, and so a lot of times they may have 3 or 4 siblings that are removed from a home at one time. Well, not every home is equipped to take 3 or 4 kids. And so you may have 1 kid here, you may have 2 kids here, you may have another kid here. So, I mean, kids could be ultimately a 4-child home could be split up in 4 different homes.
Right.
And so, if there's not a way for them to reunify at home, they may never be able to reunify ever.
Right.
And so the ideal situation in the foster care system is to be a temporary service to where these parents can get their lives together, get the services that they need so that they can get their children back.
Now, if you adopt through the foster care system, is that set up to where there would be no real interaction with the birth parents necessarily after that, or is it like an open adoption where you try to stay in contact and maintain?
It honestly can be both. It can be either or. None of the kids that we have currently that we've adopted have any contact with biological parents. But we also know people in the foster care world and friends of ours that do have open adoptions with their biological parents. And so it goes both ways. It's really just kind of an agreement depending on the case. Some cases obviously are more severe than others, depending on what happened to the child, the trauma, the neglect, abuse, depending on what's going on. And so is it safe to have contact with the family? Or not, and so that varies depending on the situation.
And is that where child advocacy group comes in? Child advocacy to make sure the situation is safe, or what's the relationship between child advocacy groups? I can't say that word.
So different groups do different things. So as far as CASA, which is the major child advocacy program in Texas. They're just kind of like a voice for the children, because on both sides you have you usually have lawyers for the biological families, you have lawyers for the child, you have lawyers that are attached to CPS.
We're graduating too many lawyers.
You have all of these different people as far as that goes, and so the primary job of CASA as far as that goes is to advocate for the child, is to, if the child is old enough to where they can speak and have a voice and just kind of to help make sure that the agencies involved aren't overstepping or aren't really the only ones making decisions.
Maybe some self-motivation in there for one group or the other, huh?
Yes, and so that's usually just so there's more hands in the decision making process.
Right.
But different groups do different things. Me and my wife actually run a nonprofit called Kingdom Care, and we work with foster adoptive families. We work with the biological families, providing supports and services to try to help them. One, to be able to continue to foster and adopt if they're on that journey, but then also with the biological families, we help them get situated so they may have an open CPS case and they may need a bed. In fact, last night we delivered 2 beds and some mattresses and some clothes to an aged out foster dad who now has his 2 kids because his wife, their mother, was actually murdered. And so his kids, they were separated at the time, and his kids were placed with him yesterday. And so we got a call yesterday and was able to provide some beds and some stuff to get them started so that way they were able to move on. And whatever that looks like at that point in time with the incident being so close. So there are different groups that do different things as far as advocacy. There's groups that help provide resource information and go to the state and levy and do different things with that. But there are a lot of different groups involved in foster care when it comes to stuff like that.
Fantastic. Well, Dads, we're here talking with Julius Karow. He runs a ministry called Kingdom Care, and we're talking a little bit about the foster care system. I encourage you to get plugged in a little bit, learn a little bit more about what's going on in your neighborhood for kids that maybe have experienced trauma or not, or they're just put into the care. What's the biggest misconception about foster care out there that you would like to share with the dads?
I think the biggest, misconception is just that we always hear, one thing that's always told to us is I don't think I could give them back. I think it would hurt too much to have to give them back if we were to take care of them. And to me, and what I've seen in this world is that if you're that person that can love these kids that much, that it would hurt for them to leave, then you're the person that they need. Mm-hmm. Because the reason that they're in care is because they've never had that before. They've never had somebody in their life that it would pain them and hurt them for them not to be there. Mm. And that's, that's the only way as a dad myself that I could think that somebody could, allow different things to happen. And not everything that happens for these kids to be removed, is just horrific. And that's the other misconception in foster care is that these kids are abused or they're just so mistreated or, something seriously bad happened. But, if these kids go to school and they haven't had a bath because they don't have running water at home and the school reports it, that opens up a CPS case. That CPS case can open up to the kids being in foster care because they go to the home, they check everything out, the kids are sleeping on the floor, they just don't have the means to take care of them. That's considered neglect. And so, but that could happen to anybody. It doesn't necessarily mean that, mom and dad are monsters. It just means that mom and dad couldn't take care for those kids at that point. Right. And I think that that lens to itself is us as a church, our responsibility on taking care of and stepping into the gaps for these people who are hurting and need us to be there for them.
You're talking about the capital C church, not necessarily the specific church, right?
No,
the capital C church.
The capital C church.
I love what you said. We're here for a reason, and if that's a misconception that someone thinks they may have to, it would hurt too much to only have a child for a window. But what you're saying is the Lord has you there for a time and for a window. If that is the whole life of the child, then so be it. If it's 6 months, then you've touched that person as Christ would touch that person for that child for that window of time.
For sure. That is something me and my wife say, whether it's 18 minutes, 18 days, or 18 years, you have an opportunity to plant a seed. And that seed ultimately, it grows. We don't get to choose when it grows, but it grows. At some point, it's going to be watered. It may be watered by somebody else, but it's going to eventually grow. And, with the church being able to, like I said, wrap around these families, love on these families, and try to catch the system, because the system really has three ultimately defined parts. So you have kids that are going into the system, you have kids that are currently in the system, and then you have kids that are aging out of the system. And in order to, what we want to do in Kingdom Care is empty the system, we have to attack all three of those parts. And to do that, we need the church doing what you just said, where we all have our yes and our ability and the passions and the talents and the gifts that God's given us to be able to do so. That's one thing that we talk about with Kingdom Care is everybody has a yes. You can mow a lawn, you can say yes. You can cook a meal, you can say yes. You can go screw in a light bulb, you can say yes to a foster family. Because, we have a bunch of single foster moms who would love for a dad to come and just spend, 20, 30 minutes with their son playing catch, in the backyard. That's a yes. You don't have to be a foster parent to participate in foster care. And that's, why we created Kingdom Care, is because it's a bigger picture of taking care of the system. It's not foster care, because foster care, like I said, that word in itself means temporary. It means for a time being. Kingdom Care is the church itself and the mindset of the kingdom wrapping around these families, and one, trying to prevent kids from going into care, two, yanking the ones that are in care out, and three, making sure that the ones who are about to fall off don't ever fall off.
Amen. Well, dads, again, we're talking to Julius Karow, his ministry up called Kingdom Care. We've just given you a broad brush of what the foster care system is about, and that you might know a little bit more than you knew 20 minutes ago. But continue to listen to these podcasts. We've got several more here with Julius that will give some more insight specifically on foster care kids being adopted, and even adoption as an option. So stay tuned, listen to the next couple of podcasts, and we'll look forward to further discussion with Julius. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
God bless. Godspeed.